Well, hello, that's me again. Today is March 2nd, 2025. It is Sunday. It's Sunday, well, basically morning in Seattle area. Somewhere it's already evening. And what I want to say is that I was fighting the temptation, honestly, after some events which we already everybody knows and everybody discusses with Mr. whatever Zelensky, and Mr. Trump with J.D. Vance, Vice President, also in the Oval Office. I fought the temptation to immediately get online and say, "Oh, okay, here's the video. Here are my explanations," but it's my habit most of the time, let's say 99% of the time, to kind of take the step back and start counting to 10, sometimes to 100, and wait for the fallout, so to speak, just settle, and then begin to look at the picture with a little bit, how to say it, unobstructed sight, if you wish, or view. And this is exactly what I did, and I'm really glad that I did it because let's start with immediately, without basically procrastinating, about the main point which could be made about this. And many people already reacted this way, the same as I started reacting once the events of the day, when Mr. Zelensky essentially, basically behaved himself like a thug that he is, and a clown in the White House, started to become clearer. And here is the hypothesis. I mean, it's not the only hypothesis. Any real serious analyst, and this is the part of the course of any kind of the people related or involved into the analytical activity, especially in the issues of the intel, military, and things of this nature, national security, what have you, is the basically the method of the competing hypothesis. You have several hypotheses, and you say, okay, this hypothesis A, hypothesis 2, you theoretically can go and make even the table, plus, minuses, or whatever the assumptions, or hypothesis you make within the framework of one of those hypotheses, and see for yourself, oh, okay, here's the sum which is larger, so I think so it's more probable. Well, in reality, of course, it doesn't work like this, but still it helps. It's a useful tool. And in a competing hypothesis, one hypothesis is actually, beginning to stand out. And as many people, including people from who used to be the US blob, begin to suspect, and believe me, there are a number of Russian very high-level real military analysts. I know who they are, unlike all those, boys from all kinds of the, humanities degrees, running around and trying to pretend that they are real analysts, which they are not. But I'm talking about military and intel professionals, Russian professionals, who begin to say that, yeah, it is beginning to look like, and it is beginning to look like that Russians and Americans already reached some kind of the conclusion and settlement, and obviously for normal, so to speak, communications between superpowers, those ones have been completely under wraps and haven't been exposed to the hoi polloi like us, because we're not supposed to know this. Neither are supposed to know people, for example, in the United States. It doesn't apply to Russia, which would be very glad to interrupt any kind of the normalization between two superpowers, and how the method, so to speak, how they go about it. And one of these telltale signs was when Mr. Putin, a couple days ago, speaking on the what is Collegia basically summit of the top brass and top people, not necessarily top brass, but top people in FSB, main counterintelligence agency of Russia. Well, it's essentially the sort of the FBI equivalent, when he stated that people from the special intelligence services, counterintelligence services like FSB, should apply all their efforts to prevent any kind of the interruption and sabotage of the normalization of Russian-American relations. Wow, that speaks volumes. This, however, does not preclude while we obviously, hypothesize or put forth this hypothesis that okay, there is some settlement, and that is why actually probably Zelensky got the kind of sniff of it, so to speak, especially through his friends, the bloody war criminals in MI6 in London. And but we have to keep in mind that still we need to wait for the actual actions. What are the actual actions from the United States which we'll have to wait for? And I'm not talking about the statements. Statements are good, make no mistake. There's nothing wrong with, seeing the change of rhetoric and things of this nature. Absolutely, it's wonderful. It's a good start. But again, we need to wait for the complete stop of the supply of the weapons from the United States to Ukraine, or whatever is left of it. We need to see the stop of the provision of the communications by Starlink, and especially ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, which, of course, United States, Europeans are impotent in this respect. They are just absolutely paupers and, just miserable bunch of the SOBs. They cannot provide real serious anything to Ukraine. It is United States satellite constellation and other signal intel capabilities which provide 24/7 the real-time situation on the ground for the armed forces of Ukraine. So let's wait and see. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to happen. Again, we can expect any kind of the sharp turns, especially knowing the Mr. Trump's personality, which is very flamboyant and very narcissistic. But this is what we have so far, and there are signs that the panic sets in. First, if you take a look at these guys, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is European powers? They are paupers. They are just guys, with basically panhandlers, which they are. And when you look intensively of what Mr. Zelensky did, immediately flew to London after this humiliation and essentially being thrown out of the White House, from the White House. And look at this. This is the so-called summit. They use the student desks, for crying out loud, some cheap water. And yeah, you can look at this. This is pathetic, really. That's Europe, okay? And that's what many people do not understand when I say Europeans, they can do nothing about it. And here is the very interesting thing about it from one of the globalists and Mr. Bezos, and whatever CIA, whatever the other intel agency, from Washington Post. This is today. This is fresh. This is just literally, this morning. So European leaders gather in London, embrace Zelensky after Trump blowout. And so they talk about rattled European leaders are scrambling to salvage US support for Ukraine after President Donald Trump's explosive meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky. Well, as already stated, there is a hypothesis, there is a school of thought in both sides, in Russia and in the United States, and remarkably primarily among the serious professionals, former bureaucrats of the Defense Department or intel agencies, and cadre military officers, high-level cadre military officers, that it was coordinated between United States and Russia, and to basically allow United States the exit with the saving face, and thing about which I was talking for the last 10 years, essentially, that it will come down to it. And so here we have this, that rattled European leaders gathered in London on Sunday, scrambling to salvage any US backing for Ukraine. Read attentively what is written here. Scrambling to salvage any US backing for Ukraine. This is Europe, which tries to do for the United States, which is totally, personal, if you wish, own United States internal matter. And to map a way through disintegrating transatlantic security relations after the televised Oval Office blow-up between President Trump and this moron clown. And guess what? Zelensky has become the avatar for essentially MI6 and this loser Starmer and this pathetic, pardon me, country which pretends that it matters still. And the fact is, it was always about NATO, and we are observing the whole situation of indeed disintegrating transatlantic security relations because the United States needs to eat, and it will eat whatever they left of Europe, and it's good for the United States. The United States needs to eat too, and the NATO, you can start your countdown to the disintegration of the NATO, if not de jure, to at least de facto, which is what's happening now, starting from this absolute spectacle by this cretin Zelensky in the White House. So WAPO continues to lament, and again, yeah, just Starmer and Macron, these chihuahuas, these apathetic loser boys who mean absolutely nothing in the largest geopolitical picture, begin to make clear they would continue their campaign to rescue something of American backing for Ukraine. You see, again, they want to rescue something which America decides completely on its own and doesn't need some chihuahuas, standing, as Vladimir Putin stated, at their feet and, wiggling their tails, tell the United States. Again, different weight categories. United States is a superpower, one of the three. Those guys, Macron and Starmer, represent nations which are, well, basically, for the lack of a better word, is they are going down. Period. And so they rescue something of American backing for Ukraine, even as they confronted the growing evidence that Trump's pivot towards Russian President Vladimir Putin could be genuine and lasting, and that Europe would be forced to take on more Ukraines and possibly its own defense if Trump shrinks the US role. Well, Trump may shrink the US role. For now, I don't see any solid indication of that, but you know what, who knows? It takes time, evidently, and let's wait and see. Just continue to observe the actions of the American side. And so now we talk about that Macron suggested before the London meeting that the White House volcanics didn't necessarily signal a permanent breaking point of Kiev relations with Washington. Macron said Zelensky had told him since the White House meeting he is willing to restore dialogue. Zelensky is nobody. He is a toxic asset, and he is the MI6 puppet and puppet of London, and that is why those chihuahuas, they rush because they are panicking. And here's the key thing, which I was trying to deliver for the last, well, the second decade now. Europe it doesn't have resources. They have nothing to support Ukrainian war, despite the fact that they provided some equipment. They say, up to a half of the equipment for the armed forces of Ukraine throughout the special military operation. But the point is, as Mr. Chief Executive Officer Ryan Maddow stated, there's nothing left in the storage facilities of the NATO. I mean, European NATO. Of course there is. Europe, again, doesn't have industrial capacity, let alone R&D capacity to produce not only quantity. Their weapons are a joke, as bad as American weapons are. European weapons, my gosh, you saw yourself. I don't need to go out here and constantly remind you about the situation with all those best tanks of like Leopard, all those wheeled pathetic, jalopies by French, wheeled tanks, okay, and all kinds of things like that. It doesn't matter what they provide. You know what, France, for all it, for example, Russian care, they can provide the whole French Air Force in support of Ukraine. And see what's going to happen. Well, it's going to be obliterated with minimal, if any, losses for the Russian Air Force and Russian air defense. This is the gap which many of them well understand. You know why? Because they are trying, as you saw yourself, as was spoken by the Washington Post, to salvage American aid to Ukraine. Europeans try to do that, but reality is they are shaking in their boots because they know they are bankrupt, they know they are being deindustrialized, especially if you look attentively at Germany, which was the locomotive of the European economy, and the rest of them are just nothing more than, well, basically obstruction. And it will be removed if the intentions of Mr. Trump, which we begin to now, feel that they are very genuine, are true. And what can I say? The United States will simply remove them. Simple as that. It's just like that. So what do? And well, here it is. That's classic British. A British political class, mostly robbers, war criminals, genocidal maniacs, and things like that. So the Rachel Reeves unlocks billions for Ukraine and UK defense. The Chancellor calls on European leaders to step up after row between Trump and Zelensky as the Ukrainian president prepares to meet the king. Sure, yeah, if they will. I wonder what will he be wearing at the meeting with the king. But again, the British political elite has no honor, integrity, and they're just basically war criminals, most of them anyway. So yeah, they probably will find that the genocidal maniac just properly, properly feeding into their basically frame of mind there in London. And so yeah, they actually will be using their profits from the Russian stolen money. Typical British, so rob, steal, that's what it is. And basically, TASS already reacted to this, and here we are, yesterday, that for the first time the United Kingdom has provided Ukraine with a loan. Make no mistake, it's a loan still, using income from Russia's frozen assets. This was reported by the Times newspaper with reference to the Secretary of the Treasury of the United Kingdom, Rachel Reeves, explaining the conditions for the allocations of 2.26 billion pounds to Kyiv. A safe Ukraine means a safe UK. This funding will strengthen the armed forces of Ukraine, the minister said. Well, I mean, considering the pathetic level of the military and intelligence understanding of the world around them, and still suffering from delusions of grandeur for this, bunch of losers. And so here is a very interesting exchange, which, important in the sense that this is what I was talking about for so many years, that Western media are war criminals. I mean, establishment master media are war criminals. They were the guys who took, a very active part in killing of 1.2 Ukrainian men on the front lines, maiming another 2+ million, and essentially dissolving of Ukraine as a state. Here's George Galloway yesterday, 2 days ago actually, speaking to this, despicable, sewer creature Piers Morgan. And this is for the first time when the figure of his scale of George Galloway essentially tells to Piers Morgan and his ilk, those pedophiles, Central, and all this garbage, human trash, which populates the corridors of power in the United Kingdom, that he is a war criminal. He has blood on his hands because he was, including the other, you call them the journalists, they're not journalists, they are Goebbelsonian monkeys. And so he tells him, because he is responsible as part of the larger picture for, deaths of so many millions of people in Ukraine, primarily their soldiers and civilians, and of course around between 80 and 90,000 of the Russian people, including the atrocities in the Kursk region and including atrocities elsewhere. And yes, this is what needs to be said, because what can I say? It's just the way it is, and nothing could be done about this, to change it, because this is the moral, not even dilemma, this is the moral pit in which the combined West finds itself. United States, as I repeat ad nauseam, as the superpower which suddenly begins to think and act as a superpower, because superpowers, they bear responsibility for the global modus vivendi. It was, of course, on the Democratic National Committee and their basically excrement, such as Obama or Biden, and criminal cliques which supported their presidencies, when the things started to go completely haywire, and you had the fanatical ideologues who were and are utterly incompetent, who actually unleashed this whole thing. And as the result, we are beginning to speak now freely, about what has to be stated. Well, when you look attentively at Biden administrations, yeah, half of those people, I don't know, half, 35%, whatever, I mean, they have to be behind bars as war criminals and criminals against humanity. Jake Sullivan, Mr. Blinken, Victoria Nuland, Biden himself in the end, Obama, I mean, this cabal of those so-called, specialists who have been surrounding them who started this. But United States is a superpower. Superpowers move in a different plane. They, again, as I already stated, supposed to, and this very often happened even during the Cold War 1.0, they have to find modus vivendi. They have to find some kind, mode of the coexistence which allows you to continue with whatever your national goals are, and in the end, if you deduct or subtract all those fanatical elites, all those, well, like Mr. Bezos, for example, and Mr. Semi-educated dude, I mean, like Mr. Bill Gates, all those, the great causes, pushers and people who basically are involved in the social activity, that you will begin to see that in the end, the whole point of existence is providing for the good life to people in your country. Simple as that. You cannot have the successful country if your people do not live good or live well. And this is the very basic thing. So, and here we are. Now we have the situation with the, those people in Europe who did everything they could to kill Europe. And Europe is killed. It's not the question of the hypothesis anymore. It is established fact that after the arrangements which we see are going to happen, and especially when you have the actually as the sign change of position of poles and those Baltic Chihuahuas, tri-Chihuahua, whatever you call it, suddenly they don't want to fight Russians. Of course they don't, because they follow in the wake of the United States, and they are indeed Chihuahuas. They will wiggle their tail as Washington tells to Warsaw, let alone in those three villages, which are their supposedly, the capitals of those three Baltic states. And here is the issue. As already stated, the whole performance, so to speak, in the White House created an avalanche of the opinions and all kinds of things, And here is one of the things which I want to point out before I go about Europeans, that even former foreign minister of Pierre Lelouch, talking about Macron and Trump, and so he explains basically that Emmanuel Macron and France are nobodies, in which they are. They are nobody. Militarily, they are pathetic. I mean, again, if not for the nuclear deterrent, it's not even serious to talk about. And economically, this is absolutely, well, it's a basket case. And so then we have this situation. It is very interesting because these channels begin to get all kinds of their serious, subscription things, and which is fine. And here we have the Palki Sharma of the Vantage Point talking about the, what is Russian factors in basically what is transpiring before the situation in the White House with Russia. And she wants to remind you the factors to remember about Vladimir Putin. Well, she's a charming woman, very smart one, make no mistake. And the problem with this first post guys, they as is always the case with any Western, or for that matter, non-Western media organization, they have no clue what they are talking about. And speaking about the factors to remember about what is happening, she suddenly says that Ukraine obsession cost Putin elsewhere. And this is like, wow. That's interesting. Since when Putin is obsessed with Ukraine? She talks about the collapse of the Assad government, but evidently, if you take a look attentively at what is happening there, well, they do not want actually Russian bases to leave, for example, Syria. In other matter, they will be rearranged in terms of the quantity of the personnel and equipment, but those bases, as you can see yourself, they're still there. Nobody moves anything out. And Russians and new Syrian government, however you can call it, they are in negotiations. Russia gained also the base. It's not really a full naval base, but another point of the material technical support in Sudan. So when you look attentively at the basically net result for Russia, it is absolutely positive, and that's where Palki Sharma doesn't understand what she's talking about. Putin doesn't want to talk with the United States about Ukraine. This is basically settled matter by the looks of it. We could be wrong, make no mistake. Don't quote me on that. But it looks like, at least for now. But the problem is, Russians are not obsessed with Ukraine. Russians just gonna kill it, Ukraine, as was the plan which emerged, and but it's all about the modus vivendi. It is all about the basically architecture of the European security that Russia wants to avoid using the advanced weapons to turn it into the parking lot if those guys decide to commit all kinds of the nasty acts. And in terms of NATO, the trajectory of NATO, Russians are very satisfied. This is much more important than just Ukraine. And when you look at it overall, I don't know, there was no obsession. Russians think globally, and Ukraine is just, as I repeat ad nauseam for years, is just one of the links in the chain of the global events which interest Russia, and in the chain of the, global conflict, which are either in action, like Ukraine, or are brewing elsewhere. But evidently, they think they know better. They don't. Western media and Western establishment, they do not have real Russian experts. They don't. It's not, it's axiom. Give me any Russian expert from CIA or Russian expert from Stanford. They will probably not gonna feel very good after the 10 minutes of the discussion. And that is why they are always pretty much tied to very narrow rut, if you wish, of their whatever particular media or think tanks they operate within. They will not be able to hold any serious conversation on the geopolitical situation, and especially the foundation of the geopolitics, which is the military and military-industrial balance of power. They are simply not qualified. And so here we are. This continues on and on and on. But as I already stated, we have this situation, and then, of course, Russians are saying as it is. Look at this. This is what matters. Yesterday, Ukraine is unable to make up for losses at the front. Yeah, this is the only place where it is all being settled, period. And the number of wounded and killed soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine is steadily growing, the Russian Defense Ministry said. Desperate attempts by the Kiev regime to rectify the situation with the replenishment of losses on the line of contact are unsuccessful. The data for February of this year confirmed the trend of previous months about a stable exceeding, pardon me, of the number of wounded and killed servicemen over the number of mobilized. Well, they call it Tetsaka, which is the cannibals. They really steal people kidnap people from the streets. And yeah, this is essentially totalitarian concentration camp state now. And yeah, these are the heroes of the Europeans. Well, again, British invented concentration camps. And so that's, for them, it's kind of natural, their natural, habitat to talk about genocide, killing people, raping them, whatever. So that's who they are. And so according to the agency last month, at the Ukraine, more than 28,000 people were mobilized, while the total losses of the country's army for the same period amounted to 38,920 servicemen. So there you go. You already understand the trajectory of this. And even today, if you take a look, we have now again trend upward of this is for the March 2nd, and as you can see yourselves, 1,605 killed. And the Suja, what was remaining, one of the last major, actually. Well, it's the largest in Kursk. It's not really that big. It has been essentially surrounded because Russians, it's in operational surrounding. And yeah, that means, you all know what it means. So I expect the people who go to my channel and listen to all of that, to know already basic facts of the tactics and some intro-level operational things. So there you go. This is what we have. Now, of course, British, when they get slapped, this one, they begin to complain. Yeah, the guys don't love to get their ass kicked, but that's they're only good for. And they say Vladimir Putin launches attack on ship carrying British weapons for Ukraine. Ukrainian officials rejected Russian Telegram channel claims. Well, reality is British and Americans still recently, they were obviously knowing what is going on in terms of the targeting by Russians, and nobody wants to die, really. So they were hiding their HIMARS, well, not HIMARS, ATACMS, for example, and even their air defense complexes on their cargo ships. Well, Russians have their own excellent satellite constellation, and they see it. Well, guess what? Yesterday, two Iskanders visited those ships, and yeah, there is no more ATACMS, and some people say up to 30 British and I don't know about Americans, but British have been killed. So, and if you take a look at the Express, this is US edition of this tabloid, take a look at the right side where you have this guy. Ukraine soldier says we are not puppets of the US after Trump and Vance spat. Well, actually you are. And somebody has to explain to them that they are, well, how to say, cannon fodder. And, well, we can now conclude this conversation today with us that everything what has been talked about for the last few years, and especially with the start of special military operations, and suddenly Western media begin to talk about Ukraine as what it is in reality, not British. British will continue to push their narrative, and yeah, they're those delusional people. And as I already stated, and George Galloway stated, all people of kinds of from the Economist or the Week, they're war criminals. I mean, most of them, they have no honor, integrity, they are prostitutes, or whores actually. Some of them work for this, would rather work for free, but as long as they can see Russian civilians, or Russian soldiers killed, this is their, genocidal mindset, and that's what you would expect from them. But we have this situation, and as I already stated in the beginning, that the events in the White House a couple days ago, you have to view them as the, probably semi-official start of de facto dissolution of NATO. It was a dead man walking for a while now. And now, when you look at the panic of the Europeans, you begin to clearly understand they are militarily and economically impotent. This is the reality, and they better face up to this reality, because if they don't, they're not going to survive as nations. Neither France, United Kingdom is already pretty much on the way down. And you look at Germany, we have a complete mental breakdown. And we're not talking about the elites, we're talking about the population at large. And this could be dangerous for them. Now, of course, they cannot march, as it was the case in the World War II, to the east, because once they even begin to think about it, their capitals will be turned into the parking lots, and they will be turned without use of the nuclear weapons. So, they have to think really hard how they want to continue to exist. Do they want to be the second tier, which they are already more or less, fairly, surviving, but I mean, not wealthy, but, just living economically okay, or they will be completely, eaten alive. And that's what I wanted to tell you guys today. And as always, in conclusion, I want to thank my wonderful patrons for their support. And those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I would really appreciate that. So, guys, have the nice rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.